So I don't know about you, but Madame Corona has had me returning to the prenuptial darkness quite frequently. Now, although darkness and depression are great, you do have to sometimes take a break. Self-care, uwu. So I like to find comfort and validation of my sadness in the situation by escaping into dark, thematically appropriate, and relatively cynical media. Since you've clicked on this video, you're probably familiar with Animal Crossing, but for the uninformed boomers out there, let me explain the basic premise of the game. Animal Crossing is a light-hearted and bright life simulator, where you conduct thrilling activities such as collecting fruit, paying off your loans, filling a museum, and small talk. Now, a good 95% of the internet hate going outside, hate socialising, and hate mundane daily activities and chores. So of course releasing this game was a horrible business decision because Nintendo completely missed the mark with their audience. I mean, expecting people to want to do adult things in a market filled with FPSs and fast-paced games? Outrageous! Because of this, Nintendo received universal backlash for the poor choice of game to release in the current pandemic atmosphere and awful, awful sales. The internet is a confusing place. Animal Crossing is a game that should, in theory, not make sense, and I find myself struggling to explain the appeal to people who aren't familiar with the series. I think that it's the type of thing that you just get or you don't. But fan or not, it's undeniable that Animal Crossing is connected with millions of people across the world on a deep aesthetic, ooh, cute Instagram succulent self-care level. It's not just who find themselves ensnared in debt they never asked for. I mean, this cute, innocent life sim. It's actual, functioning humanoids. The Merrill twins play it.
I have a normal toilet, I have a urinal, and then I have a bidet. It's for everyone. Everyone can use these bathrooms. Yep, this is a gender equality bathroom.
So what do? What on earth is prompting people to display such tonal dissonance between their actual lives and their virtual lives? What's the appeal of Animal Crossing? Why do people play it? The answer can be condensed into one word: escapism. A temporary escape from, or potential embrace of, the darkness. Oh, don't mind me. I was just planning the destruction of the human race and the dismantlement of our neoliberal economic system. Revolution. As the personification of the darkness, my cogs don't turn in the same direction as you bipedal freaks, so I find it a bit gauche to talk about your plebeian monkey brains, but I'll stoop to do so for a second. I mean, granted, you all are kind of stupid, but you do make fun games. You see, I'm friends with Flora simply because, we're both stars. Oh god. Now, to explain what escapism is and how it relates to Animal Crossing, you have to understand a bit about human psychology. There's this idea that we can consciously split who we are and who we would like to be. These two different perceptions of ourselves are given names: the ideal self and the actual self. For example, since the ideal self is who we wish we were, the characteristics they usually hold are positive. For example, they might be intelligent, strong, or charismatic. On the other hand, our actual characteristics may be a bit average, and will usually be a mixed bag. Although most of you will have redeeming factors, we may in reality additionally be weak, socially awkward, and not particularly brilliant. Our ideal self can include a social role too. For example, our ideal self could be a parent, or a soldier, or hero. I encourage you to take yourself as an example. Think about who you wish you were, whether that be someone who exhibits certain characteristics or a specific social role. Now think about who you actually are. Most of you Gen Zillennial simpletons will probably err on the more self-deprecating side, but you'll probably have some characteristics that you wish you had, meaning that your ideal self and your actual self have overlapped. When your ideal self matches up with your actual self, you usually experience feelings of well-being and elation, i.e., it feels good to be the person you wish to be. We call this congruence, meaning harmony and compatibility. However, when your actual self doesn't match up with your ideal self, you tend to experience feelings of dejection and disappointment, i.e., it feels pretty trashy not to live up to who you wish you were. We call this discrepancy, meaning lack of harmony and compatibility. Those of you who are more familiar with Madame Noire will struggle more to experience this congruence between the two selves, because it seems that no matter how much you achieve and how much you grow, the goalpost keeps on moving. And for that, I sincerely apologise, my dears. Now this is great and all, but what does this have to do with Animal Crossing? You're probably asking. Previously, before the internet, that being up to and including the fall of Rome, we used to seek convergence through relationships. Close bonds of romantic, parental, maternal, and platonic creeds would help bring out the ideal self-characteristics in each other. For instance, say you really wanted to be a parent. Having a child and having a relationship with that child would shorten the gap between your actual self and your ideal self, allowing you to converge. Welcome to cyber reality. However, now that we live in cyber reality, we increasingly find convergence through electronic media, like video games. Video games have been identified as a rich landscape to live out your fantasies, partly due to the abundance of idealistic characteristics to roleplay as. In other words, you can play out being your ideal self. To quote a 2012 study,
video games provide a gamut of idealized attributes embodied by ready-made idealized goals in highly immersive narratives. For example, the protector of kingdoms in World of Warcraft, a caring parent in The Sims, or a tough gangster in Grand Theft Auto.
God, isn't it deeply validating to have an academic outlet notice one of your niche interests, like Andrew Prolinsky, Netta Weinstein, Koi Mariyama, Martin F. Finch, and Richard M. Ryan noticed my interests, The reason we may enjoy video games so much is because they provide us opportunities to act in similar ways to our ideal selves through gameplay, and access those feelings of joy and elation associated with convergence. So from here on out, it's going to get very serious, very intellectual, very scientific, so I feel as though I can only talk about it in front of a more serious backdrop. Because here at Stephen McCall Industries, we only serve the most tasteful and classy aesthetics. Gosh, I'm really nailing the tacky early 2000s Hannah Montana look. Kate Moss be like, I shouldn't tarnish her name with my awful costume and set design. Throughout this video, I have and will continue to refer to an essay called The Ideal Self at Play, the appeal of video games that let you be all you can be. If you're interested in all of the details of what I'm about to say, I would recommend reading the study yourself and applying what I say about Animal Crossing to the study's explanation of escapism. All of this is to say that I've simplified this quite a bit. So, a potential Oxbridge administrator who's possibly watching this video because I'm going to put it in my personal statement, I promise you I know what I'm talking about. Please don't think I'm dumb. Senpai, please give me those free music lessons, mommy. I need the English breakfast every day, or otherwise, how am I going to survive university? I want to add another category that's specific to video games, to those groupings we made earlier about the self, the game self. The game self is defined as how players experience themselves when playing a game, i.e., how you feel like when you're playing as another character. I found this pretty easy to get confused with the actual self because of the common phrase, this transported into another world. I think almost everybody can distinguish between their game self and their actual self. When you're playing Skyrim and living out all of your sexy furry fantasies, I'm pretty sure most people know that they're not actually an off-putting cat person. But I still think that playing a game can provide the illusion that you're actually the character you're playing as, even if it's temporary and on a certain level self-aware. The study I looked at has several key hypotheses as to why video games have such an appeal. The first key hypothesis is that game-to-ideal self-convergence leads you to want to play the game more. If a game provides you with the opportunity to roleplay as Spider-Man, and you're really into Spider-Man and someone look up to him, you're going to want to play the game more. Another hypothesis is that immersion also makes you want to play the game more. So if we continue with the Spider-Man example, the game's super realistic and makes you feel as though you're actually Spider-Man, you'll get more out of the game. To apply these two hypotheses to Animal Crossing, we have to first establish what the ideal self is in Animal Crossing. I think that Animal Crossing is a unique example, because unlike in games like Uncharted or Tomb Raider, there isn't a clear and obvious answer to this. In those games, you have a clear character or set of characteristics to roleplay as, but in Animal Crossing, it's less a single character or set of characteristics, it's more a type of person. The game encourages you, through certain characteristics, to live your in-game life in a certain laid-back way. Rather than role-playing as Lara Croft, you're role-playing living the island life. Firstly, let's look at the aesthetic design. It's bright, cartoonish, and almost infantile. The oversized heads, the colour palette, the Mr. Potato Head style features, the shiny plastic-like quality to your island. All of this pushes you to view your village's life as carefree, enjoyable, and idealistic. And Animal Crossing does this beautifully. I think this game looks
stunning,
despite not being technically impressive or particularly different from the style of the previous games, but everything just pops.
I love you, Flora.
Little details like the glimmers when you sit in the butterfly room, or the little expressions your character makes in the mirror, and the distant islands when you go swimming, all really complete the game. It's just such ooh, sparkle, sparkle. Unless you're engaged in fishing or bug catching, you're almost never expected to provide a quick reaction to anything. I went on an Overwatch binge before playing this game, and honestly, that felt like going from watching Mariah Carey bellow on the top of her skinny little lungs to getting into a cold hard stare with RuPaul. Your character just kind of nonchalantly waddles around, plucking and then selling endangered species, fueling the colonialist endeavours of the imperial raccoons. I can't count how many times I've spent at least half an hour just watching fish in the aquarium. In this world, everything can just wait. There's no boss for you to answer to, there's nothing you need to do. There's no starvation or death, there's no illness or disease. Don't you worry, Miss Corona, I'm getting on to you soon. We therefore view our village's life as laid back and calm, and free of the nightmare of school or work culture through the gameplay. Thirdly, the music. Very few instruments are used, and pieces are almost never in a minor key. There are very few tracks that are pensive or melancholic. Music has a great effect on the way people react to media. Think about the way Animal Crossing music makes you feel, and then think about the way Minecraft music makes you feel. While of course the games have their differences, both are considered quite relaxing. However, in my opinion, the moods are vastly different. Stop that. Compare how this makes you feel. To how this makes you feel. If you ever played Minecraft, you've probably just felt a sense of melancholy and nostalgia. Minecraft music makes you feel calm, but it's more like that bottle of whiskey your uncle has in the cupboard just to fucking feel something. Whereas Animal Crossing takes that bottle, pats you on the head, and puts you in bed to watch Sailor Moon for the 48th time this week, as any good friend should. The music makes the atmosphere in Animal Crossing even clearer. It's upbeat and happy. Even the setup of the game promises your character a calm and carefree lifestyle. You're dropped onto a desert island rich in natural resources, with the opportunity to find friends who love you, things to collect, and a socialist utopia to build. And peaches! One could say you're really living the island lifestyle. The game itself in Animal Crossing is an innocent, positive, and happy-go-lucky villager. The reason we enjoy playing the game so much isn't just because the individual components make us feel relaxed and calm, it's because we get to fantasize about living a relaxed and calm lifestyle. You may not have a happy, easygoing life. Once again, getting onto you soon, Miss Corona. But for however long your Switch's battery life lasts, you can be that happy, easygoing person. The gratification and joy gained from this escapism, and the convergence between your game self, you when you're playing the game, and your ideal self, who you wish you would be, is amplified by the fact that you're probably immersed in the game. As we said earlier, immersion makes you more motivated to play the game, and if Animal Crossing is anything, it's immersive. I've seen people being genuinely emotionally attached to their island, and having actual care and love for these villagers. People are in fact so attached that introverted, recluse gamers are willing to communicate with each other to traffic Animal Crossing characters. Yes, that is an actual thing that happens. What the fuck? The game is of course immersive in other ways, but I think you get the gist. People are really involved in their virtual Animal Crossing lives, to an extent where for many people, they feel real. And this heightens the gratification you get for escaping into the world, and for living out your island life fantasy. So, I've explained the reason people enjoy playing Animal Crossing, but as I'm sure none of you are asking, when does the death and decay come into this? God, what's happening to planet Earth? It's so depressing. There has to be some silver lining here. Oh, delicious. So, for the uninformed, Mademoiselle Rona is currently shaking up planet Earth at the exact same time that a new Animal Crossing game was released. Think about that for a second. A pandemic and the most bingeable game at the exact same time? Shigeru Miyamoto, why did you invent coronavirus? One of the hypotheses in the study, which I haven't mentioned yet, is of particular interest in this situation. It posits that the greater the difference between the actual self and the ideal self, the more intrinsically motivating video games will be. In other words, if you're vastly different from who you wish you were, you'll get more out of games that allow you to roleplay as your ideal self. Being locked down, cut off from social connection, and losing the flow of day-to-day life is possibly as far away from the idyllic, laid-back island life as I can imagine. Isn't there something incredibly refreshing about switching on a console and just feeling calm and normal for half an hour? Especially when you haven't had school for 4 months and have spent the last 13 hours in a semi-conscious fugue state, spilling glitter all over your semi-naked body and watching Morrissey interviews. Our actual self is probably remarkably different to our ideal self during this pandemic. We may want to be relaxed, laid back and on the beach, but we're all experiencing trauma en masse and are probably in reality anxious, nervous and unsure. I just want to touch on another point that the study brought up which I find interesting. Players with high actual self, ideal self discrepancy found games most motivating if actual self, game self discrepancies were small. This is interesting and links to a popular trope in media, the everyman. The everyman is a trope in storytelling mediums. They're meant to be normal and we're therefore meant to relate to them. Think about Marty McFly from Back to the Future. He's just an ordinary person, unfamiliar with the Doctor's shaganananery, until he was thrust into the midst of it. And we, as audience members, are meant to identify. And what purpose does this serve, you may ask? I don't want to watch a dopey teen walk about on the stage for an hour and a half. Give me some more Sir Ian McKellen, thank you. They're there because we have an easier time grounding ourselves in the narrative when we can see ourselves in the character, and we can put ourselves in their shoes. Anybody can place their feet in Frodo's non-existent shoes and imagine themselves taking the ring to Mordor. That's interesting to me as a viewer, because I'm involved, and I care about me. That's one of the things I like about Animal Crossing. You're able to shorten the gap between your actual self and your game self due to the sheer amount of customization there is. Your everyman is such an everyman that they're an every woman. That's right kids, Animal Crossing abolished gender. Yay comrades, we did it. We abolished gender. You know, that thing that every liberal definitely 100% wanted to do, and totally just wasn't a thing for Piers Morgan to complain about while he had a stroke about sausage rolls on actual fucking TV. By changing your village's appearance and what neighbours they passively aggressively ignore, you can customise them to reflect yourself, which therefore leads to, as the study said, greater intrinsic motivation. So there we have it. An explanation of how a cute, simple sim managed to become such a large part of so many people's lives and provide social connection in a time when actual face-to-face connection is often unavailable. However, the inner boomer is constantly questioning me about what this says about society, but I don't care, because in the end, you have to switch the game off. And that's when I swoop in and absorb you once again in the ever-existent darkness. Games and escapist media aren't the sun illuminating our day brightly. They're the stars, speckled across a dark and dingy sky, providing only a temporary and little twinkle against the backdrop of of the dark abyss. Video game escapism and escapism in general is an alluring prospect, which only gets more alluring as technology marches forward. Trust me, I know. Only a few months ago I was barely functional after watching The Lord of the Rings. That's how hard escapist media hits me. Now, what happened 3 months ago stays between me and the Lord, but I may or may not have stooped to writing Sam and Frodo fanfic. Where's my scribble cushion? Are you happy, Miss Shah? This is what I'm using my level 8 English GCSE skills for. I feel the need to say that no, escapism is not the solution to your problems, and is, as the name would suggest, a temporary escape. A place where you can be who you want to be. So for the love of God, please use it responsibly. It's like alcohol. If you enjoy a glass of wine with dinner and the occasional vodka cranberry or 8, that's fine. But if you need a bottle of Jack Daniels to get up in the morning, then that stops being such a cute fashion moment, you know. Not really the 2020 vibe. Actually, it very much is the 2020 vibe, if I'm completely honest. I want to end this video on a positive note. I can proudly say that despite the tough situation, the gaming community has risen to the challenge, has observed the dangers of their medium, and has therefore worked around it, has used Animal Crossing and video games only in measured amounts, has risen to the challenge, and has responsibly entertained themselves, and stayed safe and stayed at home, reasonably.
Today, we're going to an island with 915 hours spent on it.
Things I need to address. First, the title for this video was supposed to say week and not 3.
So, Animal Crossing New Horizons came out not that long ago, but I've already reached the point where I don't want to play it as much anymore.
Excuse me.